One of the challenges of this movie in terms of design was it needed to be consistent with the timeline and the reality of what Star Trek did as a series.
Star Trek kind of created its own visual language and design.
It's amazing to me how we got away with what we did. We were on a very, very skimpy budget. And in a way that served us well because we did not have money for great sets. So the stories really had to rely very strongly on the people.
We wanted to pay tribute to the original TV series.
On the other hand, it needed to look like something that for today's audience, you know, futuristic and cool.
We wanted to take it to the next level. This is a big budget movie and not a TV show. The movie definitely has this kind of future retro feel to it. The first part of the movie, our Kelvin spaceship sequence, refers to sci-fi of like the late 30s, like the Buster Crabs stuff, and also like the early 50s things like The Day the Earth Stood Still. That's all kind of mashed together to create this look that's 30 years before our main story.
The whole feeling for this scene is kind of very tense and it's about to get worse. The idea is that a very unusual thing just happened. You guys have picked up that there is some kind of anomaly, some ship that has not been seen before.
What is the closest match of registry?
Nothing even close, sir.
The Kelvin is the first big interior spaceship bridge that we see, and it's the most that you would look at and go, oh yeah, this must be the new Star Trek movie, because it kind of looks like what you've seen before. The Kelvin is the generation before the Enterprise, so this is kind of the ship that's been around for 30 years, and it's not necessarily on its last run, but it's the old model. And we did that on purpose because we wanted the Enterprise to feel very new as compared to the Kelvin. Yeah, it's hard to make something like a spaceship look real, you know? They need to look like they actually kind of work, as opposed to being like cardboard boxes in space.
It's the details that Scott did, like, for example, on the Kelvin. There's little things that you don't even think about, which is there's like handrails all around, which are, you know, it makes sense because, you know, you're in space and you'll get knocked around.
If you look at the set of my ship, it's not the pristine, computerized ship. It's one of those worn-down ships which has been out there, and the seats are a little bit worn down. It's that kind of a feel to it, which makes it more real.
We're putting a little history on the chair.
All remaining powers to forward shields. Prepare shuttles for evacuation.
Great.
JJ very much wanted to show the machine rooms and the guts of the spaceships in a hugely dramatic way.
Usually in Star Trek, you see the bridge and you see the corridors, but you really don't have a sense of how big those ships are. So we wanted to find places where we could shoot and really give it scope.
Shuttle at 10, Katie. You're racing for your lives, okay? Move!
JJ's a master, and Scott Chambliss did a tremendous job of finding locations that you don't have to build a set. You can leverage off existing locations.
Initially, we scouted the Long Beach generating station for the cell block. Then when we saw a particular area, JJ fell in love with it for the engine room of the Kelvin.
The Kelvin was supposed to be something that had been in service for years, so when we're in the shuttle bay and in the machine rooms, we're actually in the Long Beach power plant that was built in the 1930s, and it's enormous, and it feels like a place that's been around forever, which is how we wanted the Kelvin to feel.
I'm not sure if we're in a submarine, on a tanker, or in deep space, but whatever it is, it's great.
It had all the wear and tear, and the texture that JJ and I love working with, the layers and layers of reality and the dirt and the grime.
And it's like this big, creepy, eerie, echoey, dark, dingy building, and you walk through it and you think, God, I don't even have to act. This is incredible.
There's a big one.
Just keep breathing, you'll be fine.
And the baby too, right?
And the baby too.
All the bridges and stuff that I had to go on between the Kelvin and getting on the shuttle, and just the fire and the water and the sparks and the stuff, and I mean, there was no having to imagine anything.
Let's go! Move! Move!
The interior of the Kelvin is very submarine-like, and then when we cut to the exterior of the ship, sort of reflects that. It's very worn, very used. It's a lot darker than we're used to seeing ships in Star Trek.
We we wanted the Enterprise, even though it's going to be set up like the Enterprise was on the TV show, to feel very new and sexy.
What JJ wanted and what Scott wanted were both the same thing, which was to remain true to the original feel of the Enterprise, but actually make it look cool, functional, but also futuristic, you know, because this is happening 300 years in the future.
Scott Chambliss had a team of designers on the show early on doing versions of the Enterprise. And then we have a guy, Alex Yeager, who really made sure that it was a real 3D thing. It worked and add details and add functionality to it.
At first, we were kind of all apprehensive because we're like, is this going to be some crazy off-the-wall thing? And it actually turned out to be a very sort of homage, I guess, to the original series Enterprise.
There was a lot of checks and balance. We say, well, should that engine be on, or what does that engine do, or how do these doors open? And we check with the experts. Fortunately, a couple guys in the model department were big experts on it.
When it came to kind of deciding what we're going to do with it, it was definitely a task that weighted heavily on all of us. The Enterprise is the quintessential gemstone of science fiction. There's nothing bigger, more iconic than the Enterprise.
I worked with all the Enterprises in miniature form with the exception of the original one. And this ship got a little bit of stuff from the original Enterprise, from the original TV series, and then we have a lot of the elements that you'd see on the Enterprise A.
JJ had said that he wanted to turn it into a hot rod. And that's what I'm most proud about, actually, was that we did turn the Enterprise into kind of this hot rod thing.
I think the newest part was the nacelles going from a basic cylinder, which they were on the original series, to these sort of swoopy forms. Another thing on this ship, too, was that JJ wanted something to happen to the ship when it goes into warp.
When I was a kid and I watched Star Trek, the ship never really did anything. You know, nothing really moved. And I was sort of determined, actually, to put some moving parts on it, you know.
When the Enterprise goes into warp, we have these panels that pop up on the back of the engine that sort of help us know that this thing's about to go into warp. It's one thing that is a little off-canon in comparison to the original series is our Enterprise is about twice as big as the original Enterprise. But that was done to just increase the grandeur of the Enterprise, and so our Enterprise turned out to be a little more than twice the size of the original Enterprise.
One of the very important shots on the show, obviously, was the first time that you see the Enterprise in its full glory. And JJ said, let the ship break frame. It's like the ship is so big that the camera can't contain the whole thing. So you'll notice the edges of the ship are actually cut off, and it makes it feel bigger and grander.
We did a lot of research on what does an object look like, you know, when it's that big. I remember watching the Queen Mary 2 when it came to San Francisco, and it's all a little khaki wampus all over the place. Each of those panels is just not true.
If you have a ship that's 1,500 feet long, you're never going to get a perfectly straight line down it. Anything that's built by the human hand has slight imperfections.
When a computer draws a straight line, it is absolutely straight. There's no error. And so when you want to look at the Enterprises, each panel just has to have just a little bit of imperfection.
So we spend a lot of time, and we're very meticulous with doing that, because it's easy to look at something and say, you know what, that looks fake, or it doesn't look quite right. And one of the things we pride ourselves on is just putting that extra work in.
You'll see it when light or the sun travels across the surface. It just changes just slightly as it goes from one panel to the next.